Hey, this is Wanker Reviews, and I'll be doing a video on bad times at the El Royale. Now, I went to an advanced screening, and I have to say that I was actually a little disappointed in this. It was actually very slow in the beginning, and that's not to say that nothing happens in the first half of the movie, but it was really hard for me to get into. it I don't know, I just didn't really care about any of the characters, and it was maybe like an hour into the movie where I felt like, okay, when are we gonna get to like the whole point of this movie? Like, when are we gonna like find out what the hell's going on with these characters? Because the first half of this movie is like we see the characters' background, we see like what they're all up to and how they ended up at the hotel. But during that whole time, I honestly felt like it was very pointless. Like, the movie felt too long, and it felt pointless. Meaning, there was like a lot of stuff that could have been cut out, and a lot of editing choices that could have been cut out. There was a one editing choice that I didn't really like that really made the movie feel so much longer, and I felt like they could have done something different. And it's something that I've seen in other movies before, where one event happens and then we see like the point of view of that same event from different characters, if that makes sense. Like, one thing happens, like one character gets killed, and we see like different versions of that person getting killed from other people's perspective. And I don't know, I didn't really like that. I felt like that made the movie so much longer because we were just seeing the same thing over and over again. And I get why they chose to do that, but because like a lot of things were happening at the same time to each character, and so that's why they had to like cut, like, that's why they chose to do that, because every like major things were happening to each character at the exact same time, and they wanted to show it all like coming together. But to me, it just felt like it was boring to me. I didn't really like it. I didn't really like any of the characters. Uh, and it wasn't until maybe an hour after the movie where we get to like the real meat of the plot, and it involves a bag of money. Now, I'm not going to give any spoilers away, because the less you know, the better. But there's a scene where a guy is trying to get a bag of money with the help of a female character, and that whole scene was very clever. And that's when the movie started to pick up the pace for me. It was very suspenseful. And right after that scene, we're introduced to Chris Hemsworth. And I'm actually surprised that he's really not in this movie for that long, especially in the first half. And as soon as his character shows up, and everyone knows that he's the villain in this, so as soon as his character shows up, it starts to get really, it starts to pick up the pace, it starts to get very suspenseful, and it starts to feel like a Tarantino movie. And we're finally getting to the point, to getting to the reason why I was looking forward to watching this. And I honestly wished the second half of this movie took up more time throughout the whole movie, because the second half actually goes by very quickly. And again, I don't want to give too much away, but Chris Hemsworth is the bad guy, and he's like gets involved with this money. And there's like a certain game that he likes to play with one of the casino. He likes to play like a game with all the other characters involving a casino game. And I thought that was very suspenseful. I thought that was super creepy. And I honestly wish the whole movie felt like this. The first half of this movie is basically a build-up, and I knew even while watching the movie that we were gonna have to get to a certain point, that it was gonna have to build up to something more. But I honestly wish it didn't have to do that, because that's like an hour into the movie. Because this movie is over 2 hours long. And the part with Chris Hemsworth when he's introduced, and he's the bad guy, like that felt like a Tarantino movie. That was super suspenseful, and I left the theater feeling satisfied because something finally actually happened. And the second half does end abruptly. Like, we get to the climax pretty quickly, and that was a little disappointing, because I was really into it. Like, I was finally into the movie, and then does erupt, and it does erupt all of a sudden. Another thing that I didn't really like was Chris Hemsworth himself. Now, he's, I felt like he was miscast. He didn't really come, like, if it wasn't for the writing and what was happening in the plot, he would have been completely useless. And I honestly felt like he was miscast simply because he just wasn't intimidating. Like, he literally had his shirt opened the entire time. Like, he was literally showcasing his abs the entire freaking time. And that just made him, like, some people would think that's sexy. Like, no one's gonna think he's scary. And it's a shame, because the character that he does play has potential to be really scary, really intimidating, sort of charismatic at the same time, but Chris Hemsworth isn't able to deliver that properly, because he's showcasing himself. He's basically half naked 90% of the movie, 95% of the movie, 95% of the time he's in this movie. And he's basically just eye candy, and it's like I kept eye rolling the entire time he was on screen. Like, for God's sake, put some freaking clothes on. Like, is it that hard to button up your top and keep your pants on and stop flirting with every woman that you come in contact with? And I don't know why they even made that directing choice for him. And I'm not too familiar with Chris Hemsworth. Like, I recognize him a little bit, but I'm not too familiar with a lot of his work. And I'm not sure if he's taken seriously as an actor. And if he's not, this wasn't the right movie, the right role for him to be taken seriously, because really he's just eye candy. And the trailers actually do a good job at showcasing how his character is, because which is some half-naked guy who knows he's hot, who's wiggling his abs all over the place. So that was really annoying. I don't know, like, I wish they had cast someone else. And, because I did actually like that character, and that villain could have really been scary. Like, what his character was doing was scary, and was, you know, thrilling. Like, it kept me on the edge of my seat, but it didn't deliver the way it could have been delivered if they had cast someone else and made the character not so sexy, if that makes sense. But overall, I give this a 5 out of 10, because I was disappointed. And it's sad that it took an hour into the movie for me to really get into it. Because the first half was super boring. And that's not to say that's not to say that nothing happens in the first act, because a lot of things do happen in the first act. But I just personally wasn't interested in it, and I wasn't interested in these characters until the second half. So yeah, 5 out of 10. Thanks for watching.